A family dinner turned into chaos when lies and sibling rivalry exploded. Secrets spilled, trust shattered. So this all went down last weekend, and I still can't wrap my head around it. My cousin Sir 36F basically lit a match and burned years of fake peace in our family to the ground at a restaurant, no less. For context, Sarah has always had this weird competitive thing with her younger sister, Emily 33F. Like, growing up, everything was a contest of grades, friends, careers, relationships. The rest of us cousins would joke about it, but honestly, it's always been tense. My aunt and mom, Linda, 62F, doesn't help either because she constantly favours Emily. She'll deny it, but everyone sees it. Emily was the golden child, and Sarah was always too much. Anyway, fast forward to Saturday. My uncle John, my dad, 65N, decided to throw a family dinner at this nice Italian restaurant downtown. We were all there, me, my parents, Sarah and Emily, Aunt Linda, Uncle John, and even a couple of other cousins. It was supposed to be this let's all reconnect type of evening. We get seated at this long table near the window. The vibe was fine at first, wine pouring, appetizers coming, everyone doing the usual small talk. Then, about halfway through, Linda makes this little comment that just set everything off. She looks at Emily and goes, "I'm so proud of how stable and responsible you are. Not everyone can manage their life like you do." The table went dead quiet. Everyone knew exactly what that was a dig at Sarah. Sarah kind of forced a laugh and said, "Wow, Mom, subtle." But you could see her eyes narrowing. Emily, of course, smiled all smug, like she was soaking it in. She tried to change the subject, but Sarah wasn't having it. She leaned forward across the table and said, "You know what's funny? Since we're all being honest, maybe we should talk about who's really been responsible in this family." At this point, I swear you could hear the forks clinking down. My Uncle John muttered, "Sarah, not here," but it was way too late. Sarah drops the bomb. Apparently, Emily had been lying for months about a promotion she claimed she got at work. She'd been bragging about this fancy manager title at family gatherings, and Linda had been parading her around like some star child. But Sarah found out through a mutual friend who actually works at the same company that Emily never got promoted. She just changed her email signature and kept up the act. The table exploded. Emily's face went red instantly, and she started stammering, "That's not true, you don't know what you're talking about." But Sarah pulled out her phone and literally shared text from her friend confirming it. Linda immediately jumped in, raising her voice, "Sarah, enough, you're just jealous. You always have been." That's when Sarah snapped back, louder than I've ever heard her. "Jealous of what? Of lies? Of being the golden child while covering up every screw up? I'm done." The entire restaurant went dead silent. Other tables were literally staring. I was just sitting there like, holy this is happening. So, there we are, half the restaurant staring, my Aunt Linda practically shaking with rage, and Emily looking like she was about to burst into tears. Meanwhile, Sarah, she looked calm, like she'd been waiting years for this moment. Uncle John tried to do damage control. He raised his hands and said, "Okay, enough, we're in public, let's not air dirty laundry here." But Sarah just gave this cold laugh and said, "Maybe it's time the laundry got aired, because I'm sick of sitting through dinners like this, pretending Emily's perfect." Emily's voice cracked when she shot back, "You're just bitter because nothing in your life worked out the way you wanted." That line hit like a knife. I saw Sarah's face twitch, like she was holding back from losing it completely. She leaned across the table, voice low but sharp. "At least I don't build my life on lies." My mom, bless her, tried to step in. She put her hand on Sarah's arm and whispered, "Honey, please not here." But Sarah shook her off and went straight for Emily again. "Tell them, Emily, tell Mom and Dad the truth, or do you want me to keep going?" Everyone froze. You could feel the tension stretching across the table like a rubber band ready to snap. Emily started mumbling excuses, something about how the promotion was in process and how people just didn't understand the situation. But it was weak. We all knew it. Sarah crossed her arms, smirked, and said, "Funny, because HR emails don't usually take 6 months to process." Linda finally slammed her wine glass down hard. Some of it splashed onto the tablecloth. "Enough," she shouted. "I will not sit here and watch you tear your sister apart out of spite." And then she turned to me and said, "Back me up here. You know Sarah has always been dramatic." I froze. What the hell was I supposed to say? Everyone's eyes were on me. My dad gave me this look like, "Don't you dare get involved," but the words slipped out before I could stop them. Honestly, Sarah's not wrong. The table went dead again. Emily's jaw literally dropped. Linda's face turned purple. Sarah's expression softened for just a second, like she finally had someone on her side. That's when Emily completely lost it. She stood up, chair screeching against the floor, and practically yelled, "You've always hated me, all of you. You're just jealous because Mom loves me more." And that was the spark. Sarah stood up too, right in her face, and hissed, "She doesn't love you more, she pities you, and you've been living off that pity your whole life." The restaurant staff rushed over at that point, trying to calm things down. One waiter awkwardly said, "Maybe you'd like to take this outside," but nobody budged. It was like years of unspoken resentment were finally exploding in real time. Meanwhile, other diners were literally watching like it was a live soap opera. Some people were even whispering. I wanted to melt into the floor. Then Uncle John suddenly stood up, slammed his napkin down, and said the words that made everything even messier. "Sarah's not the only one lying. Emily, tell them about the money." The whole table went silent again. Even Sarah looked shocked. When my Uncle John dropped that bomb to tell them about the money, you could feel the air get sucked out of the room. Sarah froze mid-breath, Emily went pale, and Linda's head whipped around like she couldn't believe what she just heard. Emily stammered, "Dad, don't," but he cut her off. "No, you've been lying long enough." Everyone was dead quiet. Even the waiter who'd been hovering kind of backed away, sensing the nuclear fallout about to happen. Sarah narrowed her eyes. "What money?" she asked slowly. Uncle John sighed, rubbing his temples like a man who'd been carrying this weight for too long. "Your sister has been taking money from your mother and me for years. Thousands, she tells us. It's for emergencies, rent, car repairs, whatever. But I recently found out she's been blowing it on vacations and designer crap. Meanwhile, she's been bragging to this family about how successful and independent she is." I swear you could hear a pin drop. Sarah's mouth fell open, then twisted into this bitter laugh. Of course. While Mom's sitting here acting like I'm the family disaster, Emily's been draining your bank account and lying about her job." Linda immediately jumped in, her voice high and defensive. She needed help. She's had a hard time lately. You wouldn't understand. Sarah cut her off like a whip. Don't you dare sit there and tell me I'm a disappointment while you bankroll her lies. I've worked for everything I have. I pay my bills. I don't beg for handouts and then fake promotions to look important." Emily was shaking, her voice rising into a shriek. "You don't know what it's like. You don't know the pressure I'm under. Everyone expects me to be perfect. Because you elite them." Sarah shot back. You've been feeding them this image your whole life, and Mum ate it up like candy. Meanwhile, I got painted as a screw-up, no matter what I did. At this point, other diners were straight up recording on their phones. I caught one guy 2 tables over whispering, "Damn, this is better than Netflix." Linda turned on John, her voice trembling. "How could you humiliate her like this, in front of everyone? She's your daughter." And John just snapped. He slammed his hand on the table and said, "She's been lying to us for years, Linda. I'm done pretending everything's fine just to protect your golden child fantasy. Sarah deserves to know the truth too." That broke something in the whole family dynamic. Sarah's face crumpled not in anger, but in this raw hurt. She whispered, You all knew and still let me carry the blame for everything." Emily tried to defend herself again, muttering, "It wasn't that much money, but Sarah cut her off so sharp it made me flinch. Just don't. You've taken enough from them, from me, from all of us." Then Sarah grabbed her purse, stood up, and said, "I'm done with this circus." And she walked out. Just like that. Nobody moved for a good 30 seconds. Emily was crying, Linda was yelling at John. John looked exhausted, and I was sitting there thinking, well, this family dinner is never happening again. After Sarah stormed out, the restaurant felt like a haunted house. The chatter from other diners faded into the background, replaced by the heavy silence of our table. Emily was sitting there, her shoulders trembling, crying quietly into her napkin. Linda's face was red, eyes darting between John, Emily, and me, like she couldn't decide whom to attack first. John rubbed his face with both hands, muttering under his breath, "I didn't want it to go this far." But honestly, it already had. The truth was out, and there was no way to put it back in the bottle. Emily sniffled and said, barely above a whisper, I just wanted to be loved. I thought if I pretended, everything would be okay." Linda slammed her hand on the table, making the wine glasses jump. Loved? I've always given you everything. How could you betray us like this in front of the entire family?" I finally spoke, my voice surprisingly steady. "Mom, Dad, this isn't just Emily. You've been enabling this for years, and letting Sarah carry the blame hasn't been fair to anyone." Linda's face contorted in disbelief. "You're siding with her? After all the trouble she's caused?" John shook his head, exhausted. "It's not about sides, it's about honesty. Emily needs to face the consequences, and Sarah needs to know she's not the problem here." Emily buried her face in her hands, her voice muffled. "I didn't think it would come out like this. I just wanted to prove I could handle life." Linda's voice softened a bit, though her eyes were still full of fury. "Honey, you don't need to lie. You know I love you, but this was unacceptable." The waiter approached nervously, clearing his throat. "Bum, would you like some water? Maybe a moment to calm down." John nodded, but Emily just shook her head, shaking violently. I felt my stomach tighten. Part of me wanted to run after Sarah, but another part knew she needed space. She'd been the one carrying this weight for years, silently watching Emily be treated like the perfect child. Linda finally sat back, exhausted. I don't know what to do next. I feel like the whole family is falling apart." John sighed. "It already has, Mom, but maybe this is the wake-up call we needed. No more lies. No more favoritism. If we want our family to survive, things need to change." Emily whimpered, her voice cracking. "I'll pay it back. I'll fix everything. Just please don't hate me." I watched John's expression soften slightly. He looked at Emily, then at Linda, and finally said, "We won't hate you, Emily, but you need to understand how serious this is. Lies like this don't just disappear." The tension lingered, thick and suffocating. I couldn't believe how quickly a family dinner had turned into a battlefield. And yet, there was a strange clarity in the chaos. Everything had been exposed. Nothing could be hidden anymore. By the time the check came, no one was really hungry. Emily sat silently, still sniffling. Linda stared out the window, silent. John shook his head, muttering under his breath. And I realized Sarah was the only one walking away with her dignity intact, even if she wasn't here. After leaving the restaurant, Sarah walked aimlessly through the streets downtown. The cool night air hit her like a slap, but she didn't care. Her phone buzzed non-stop, texts from family, missed calls, even a few from friends asking if she was okay. She ignored them all. For the first time in years, she felt free. She found herself at a quiet park bench near the river, city lights reflecting off the water. She sank onto the bench, letting her back drop beside her. Her chest ached not from anger, but from the exhaustion of carrying decades of family tension. Every lie, every favoritism, every unspoken expectation had been shoved onto her shoulders, and tonight it finally erupted. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was me. "Are you okay? Do you want me to come get you?" She smiled faintly. "I'll be fine, I just needed space." Minutes passed, and she began replaying the night in her mind. The way Emily had laughed while pretending to be perfect. The smug look on Linda's face when she praised Emily. The shock and satisfaction on John's face when he finally exposed the truth. It was messy. Ugly. But necessary. Meanwhile, back at the restaurant, the rest of the family was in disarray. Emily had retreated to a corner of the table, her sobs quiet but steady. Linda had tried pacing, muttering things about responsibility and shame, while John stayed seated, rubbing his temples and muttering, "We have a lot to fix." I stayed silent for most of it, trying to be the neutral presence, but even I could see how broken everything was. The revelation about the money and the fake promotion had shattered the image of perfect Emily that everyone had bought into. And for the first time, Sarah wasn't the villain. A few cousins whispered about how brutal it had been, shaking their heads in disbelief. Some diners were still glancing over, clearly entertained by the family drama unfolding in their midst. Back at the park, Sarah finally exhaled, feeling lighter than she had in years. She realized that confrontation, as painful as it had been, was necessary. She couldn't keep bending to expectations, pretending everything was fine while Emily got all the accolades and praise. Her phone buzzed again, this time a text from Emily. "I'm sorry, can we talk tomorrow?" Sarah stared at it for a long moment. The weirdness was still there, but part of her wanted to respond. Maybe not tonight. Maybe not in person. But the door was slightly open, and that was enough. She finally stood, brushing off her coat, and started walking back home. It was late, the streets were quiet, and she felt a strange sense of calm. She knew the family would be different after tonight. Painful, uncomfortable, but perhaps real. For the first time, Sarah felt like she was no longer trapped in a shadow. She had spoken the truth, defended herself, and exposed the lies that had poisoned her family for years. The fallout would be messy, but at least now, everyone could no longer pretend. And as she walked past the river, city lights sparkling like distant stars, she whispered to herself, "I'm done carrying everyone else's lies. From now on, it's just me." The next morning, the tension didn't magically disappear. I went over to Sarah's apartment first thing. She looked tired, her makeup smudged, but her eyes were clearer than I'd ever seen. It was like a weight had been lifted off her shoulders, even if the aftermath of last night still loomed. "Hey," I said softly, setting down the coffee I'd brought. "How are you holding up?" She let out a short laugh, almost bitter, almost relieved. Better than I thought I would. Honestly, leaving was the best thing I could have done. I couldn't sit there and pretend anymore. I nodded. Yeah, but they're going to call, probably text, maybe even show up. She shrugged. Let them. I'm ready to handle whatever comes next. No more hiding. No more excuses. Meanwhile, back at the family house, Emily was in full panic mode. She had barely slept, pacing through the living room, muttering apologies to her parents over and over. Linda had insisted on sitting down with her, trying to guide her through how to approach Sarah. But it was obvious Emily didn't know where to start. John was quieter, more reflective. He spent most of the morning on the phone with HR, double-checking the information Sarah had uncovered. He wanted the facts confirmed before he said anything more. He refused to let his daughter manipulate the truth further. By midday, Emily finally called Sarah. The phone rang for a long, tense minute before Sarah answered. Hello? Sarah's voice was calm, almost icy. Sarah, I'm sorry, Emily started, voice shaky. I shouldn't have lied. I shouldn't have taken your money, lied about the promotion. I know I hurt you, and I don't know what else to say. Sarah was silent for a moment, just listening. Then she replied, softly but firmly, Emily, you've been lying for years. This isn't something we can just forget because you're apologizing now. I needed to stand up for myself last night, and I will not let you make me the villain anymore. There was a long pause. Emily sniffled. I understand. I really do. But I want to make things right. Can we try? Sarah sighed. Maybe, but not tonight. I need time. I can't just forget everything. You need to understand the damage you've caused. Meanwhile, Linda tried to reach out to Sarah as well, her voice full of pleading. But Sarah didn't respond. She needed space. She had finally realized that some truths couldn't be smoothed over by apologies. She had to protect herself first. By the end of the day, Sarah was calmer. She knew the family drama wasn't over. Emily would continue to try to repair things, Linda would continue to manipulate in subtle ways, and John would keep balancing the scales. But Sarah had taken her first step toward reclaiming her voice. That night, sitting alone in her apartment with the city lights outside the window, she felt something she hadn't felt in years, power. She wasn't going to let lies and deception define her anymore. She could forgive, maybe eventually, but she wouldn't forget. And most importantly, she would never let anyone make her feel small again. A few days later, Sarah agreed to meet the family, but on her terms. She chose a quiet cafe near her apartment, neutral territory, away from the formalities of the restaurant or the chaos of the family home. I went with her for support, but the rest of the family arrived soon after. Emily, Linda, and even John, who looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past week. The tension was palpable. Emily looked nervous, wringing her hands, while Linda kept glancing around as if expecting someone to jump out and accuse her of something. John stayed silent, letting Sarah take the lead. Sarah finally spoke, her voice calm but firm. I agreed to meet because I want this family to have a chance to be honest. No more lies, no more favoritism, no more pretending. Emily's eyes welled up. I get it, Sarah. I messed up. I lied. I took advantage, and I let Mum's favoritism blind me. I'm so sorry. Please, can we start over? Sarah studied her for a long moment. Then, she nodded slowly. We can start over, but it's going to take time, and you need to be accountable. No more excuses. Linda shifted in her seat, looking guilty but defensive. I see now that I treated you differently, Sarah. Maybe I was wrong. I just wanted Emily to succeed, but I see I hurt you in the process. Sarah's face softened slightly. I know you meant well, but the impact was still real. I need everyone to understand that my feelings matter too. John finally spoke, voice low but steady. We all learned something. Emily, you need to make amends. Linda, you need to stop enabling. And Sarah, you deserve to be heard and respected. Let's try to rebuild, carefully. Emily nodded, sniffing, and whispered, I'll pay back the money. I'll prove I can be honest. Sarah gave a small, almost imperceptible smile. That's a start. It won't erase the past, but it's a start. The atmosphere was tense but shifted slightly. No more screaming, no more public humiliation, just quiet acknowledgement of the pain and deception that had plagued them for years. It wasn't perfect, but it was a foundation. As we left the cafe, Sarah whispered to me, It feels strange feeling like myself again. I smiled. You've earned it, Sarah. You finally stood up for yourself. She looked back at the cafe, where Emily, Linda, and John were talking quietly, making tentative steps toward reconciliation. Sarah's steps were lighter as we walked down the street. She knew it wouldn't be smooth from here on out, but she'd drawn a line in the sand. Lies and deception would no longer define her family dynamic. For the first time in years, she felt empowered. She had reclaimed her voice, and in doing so, forced her family to face uncomfortable truths. The sibling rivalry, the favoritism, the deception, it had all come crashing down. And while the healing would take time, Sarah knew she'd never let anyone make her feel small again. As the city lights flickered on, she whispered to herself, I'm done being invisible. I'm done carrying the weight of their lies. From now on, it's my life too. The drama had burned itself out, leaving clarity in its wake. And Sarah? She finally felt like she could breathe again.